That one there. And that one there. Okay, good evening, everybody. So, how green is your airfield is the title of the talk. An informal talk to you all on BODMIN Airfield based on what's really happened over the last 2 years. So, as all talks go, first and foremost, it's an introduction. So, I'll let you know who I am and what my background is. So, this is my favorite shot of me as a baby. And I first started off actually at sea, on the ocean and not in the air. And after education in North Lancashire, I went to Nautical College, went off to sea for 15 years, and that included 8 years down in Antarctica with the South African National Antarctic Expedition, and where one of my additional onboard roles on the ship was that of the aviation coordinator for the icebreaker. The ship itself, as you see there, the SA Gullus, top right, she carried 2 33J Puma helicopters, ski-equipped, and my duties included keeping a flight watch for all aircraft and helicopters down in Antarctica when the ship was south of 60 degrees south, and we covered the Weddell Sea area, which is at the bottom of the South Atlantic. And this was in conjunction with the US Coast Guard, the AMBER program, for those out there who were at sea before satellites came along. We used to do this thing where it was called the Automated Mobile Rescue System. And you sent all your details of the ship and your courses to them. So if anybody got into trouble, they would know where the nearest ship was. The bottom right there, you'll see that's a lovely ski-equipped Dornier 228. That was of the German Antarctic expedition from the Alfred Wegener Institute, who came to give us a low flyby one day when they were en route to their own station. And of course, bottom left is a close-up of one of our Pumas as she was coming into the ship to land. So after being at sea, I decided that I didn't want to be a bachelor all my life, and I better get ashore and settle down. So I switched to aviation. I ended up with the Manchester Airport Group, and I was the airfield operations manager at Humberside for a while, before becoming the airfield manager at both Coventry and Blackpool airports under the same boss, whose name I won't mention. But I also taught for ICAO. I taught airfield management all over the world for them. And the bottom left picture is me there in Kuala Lumpur Airport. And I also did aerodrome safety audits on behalf of the Airports Council International, who are also based in Montreal, linked to ICAO. And the picture at the bottom is to show it's a tough job. Somebody's got to do it. And that's me standing on the runway in Mauritius. They sent me there for 10 days, which is horrific, as you can imagine. Anyway, by 2017, with my last employer, I was thoroughly cheesed off with the way that my employer was financing the development of the airports under my charge. And I'm sure those of you who follow the news will see what's proposed at Coventry, which will give you a good idea of the person behind the company. And I decided that a stress-free life was actually what I wanted. And all roads led to Cornwall and straight to BODMIN Airfield, as you see there, where I became airfield manager. And there's for Steve and Sue, there's a proper Piper Cub, D-Day marked. 49 is the 39th Infantry Division, if anybody's asking. So here I was at BODMIN. So BODMIN Airfield itself, what about it? Well, it's the Farm Treswithick, basically. This is a 1900 Ordnance Survey map, which shows Treswithick in the circle there that I've ringed. It only appears after 1895 on Ordnance Survey maps. And as you can see, it's located just to the north of the village of Cardinham, which is outside BODMIN, which you'll see there on the bottom left. And by the late 1960s, it was owned by the person who owns the Trago Mills department store brand. He's very much an aviator, and he was a very avid aviation enthusiast, and he wanted to make aviation available for everybody. To do this, you need an airfield, and for him, that wasn't a problem. He's got a farm. So he made his application, and he went through the process, and it even arrived on the Hansard archives, as you see here, from 1972, where one of the MPs was asking about the progress of his application for an airfield at Treswithick Farm near Bodmin. And the minister's response was he hopes to be able to announce his decision shortly. This was in 1972. And by 1975, on the 1st of June, BODMIN Airfield officially opened as a GA airfield with a very, very major public event, as you can see. He removed all the hedgerows from the farm. He did some groundwork to try and level up where he could. And Treswithick Farm now became a GA airfield. And those of you who know BODMIN well, you'll spot at the very top of that photograph along the top ridge, the A30 dual carriageway doesn't exist because obviously it hadn't been built yet. although the lane down from the A30 is still there, and the road that leads into the airfield is also still there. So Mike Robertson, who's the man who owns Trago, the aviation enthusiast, he actually formed his own company, Trago Aviation, and he actually attempted to design a training aircraft for the RAF on the tender for a replacement for the Bulldog in the early 1980s. It was built at Bodmin Airfield in what we now call the Trago hangar, and it was known as the Trago Aviation SAH-1, SAH being the initials of the designer. But sadly, it wasn't selected by the RAF to take over from the Bulldog, and as a result, only one test and demonstration aircraft was ever built at Trago. Happily, it's still flying today, as that bottom left picture shows. And then by 1983, the airfield developed to the point where the Cornwall Flying Club actually purchased it from the owner, and from that point on, Bodmin, to our knowledge, has never had any commercial herbicides, pesticide, fertilizers, any chemical ground treatment applied to the soil. And that turns out now to be the unwitting start to a traditional hay and wildflower meadow that we have. Bodmin today is still very much an open airfield for anybody, and we accept all comers. That includes anything from little flex-wing microlights to 3-axis microlights to beautiful heritage aircraft, as you see there. That is a Travel Air 400 that comes in from Henstridge every now and again. And the interesting thing about that aircraft, it's in the official colours that it was when it was a US airmail aircraft, and it operated the US airmail run from Seattle down to San Diego at the time. And the company that owned it, Pacific Air Transport, was bought by United Air Transport, who at the time in Seattle was owned by a chap called Mr. Boeing, who went on to make bigger and better aircraft. We also take helicopters, as you see. That includes the Royal family. That's the Royal helicopter that was there the year before last with the Princess Royal. And also, every now and again, we've even been requested to have a hot air balloon launch from the site. We also welcome always the emergency services, whether it be the Devon and Cornwall Police helicopter, who are based in Exeter, but they pop in regularly because they're a long way from home to save fuel instead of loitering and to have a cup of tea. The Cornwall Air Ambulance, which you see there, and also the Coast Guard search and rescue helicopters. We've had them in from both St Afford, which is the Augusta 189, and also the big S92 from Newquay, and then also the utility companies such as Western Power Distribution, the electricity people who do power line inspections, or the Ordnance Survey who do LIDAR surveys as part of their updating of all their charts. And of course, not leaving out the military, they're all here. That's the Army Air Corps to the top left, and for those who recognise that, that's an AS-365 Dauphin, and it belongs to who are known as the Hereford Gun Club, and they drop their little people on the moor to scare the other troops when they're on manoeuvres on the moor. The Merlins on the top right, they're there from the 3 squadrons that are based at Culdrose. Culdrose has a conversion unit there. They also have the big deck squadron, which are on the Queen Elizabeth and the Prince of Wales, and the small decks on the destroyers and frigates. And there's also the new Crow's Nest, which is being introduced shortly. That will be the airborne early warning Merlin with the big dustbin on the side. They are also going to be based at Culdrose. They use this all the time for night vision training because we're in a dark sky area, and also for daytime navigation work. Not forget the RAF there with the bottom with the Chinook coming in from Odium. It's a regular visitor as well when they're doing manoeuvres on the moor. And the search and rescue training unit, which you see there with them practicing when they're over the moor. That though is the star of the show. He doesn't land, sadly, but and on a number of occasions throughout the year when they're doing low-level tactical training over Bodmin or over Cornwall, because as most of you people will know, Cornwall is a low-flying area. Whenever they're in their area, they always call us up and ask if they can do a low-level approach and go around to the airfield, and we always tell them come in as low as you possibly can. And that one, as you see, came down to less than 100 feet before he decided to do his go around. So that's the airfield, and that's aviation, but we're not all about aviation. Bodmin is about an awful lot more than that. And we pride ourselves that we are in the community around Bodmin, and we encourage our community, whoever they may be, to use our airfield for whatever advantage they can get out of it. And also Pete White and his Feet Off the Ground charity, FOG, which most of you will be aware of, he organises events throughout the year which benefit local and national charities, but especially those aimed at youth. And we work with worthwhile charities such as the Barda Braves, the Children's Hospice Southwest, chicks, and we also do Help the Heroes every year, to name just a few. Not only that, we encourage all the local primary schools to send their classes up on educational visits, as you see there bottom left. And we also have cubs and beaver packs who do their badges to come up and use the airfield for their benefit. And Pete regularly goes out to primary schools to also take education on aviation out to them. We also do the same thing for the young adults. It's not just the youngsters. And every year we have 2 scout camps over a long weekend, one for the Devon Scouts and one for the Cornwall Scouts, where the Cornwall Flying Club members who they volunteer their own time and their own aircraft, and over the long weekend they do tuition in engines, airframes, navigation, meteorology for them all, and then they all get a flight, a navigation flight, to also for the Scouts to earn their navigation and their aviation badges. And we also look after the big children too. So as you see there bottom left, the local model radio control clubs come up and they can use a real airfield for their aircraft. And every now and again, many of the local car club owners request to come up, whether they want to come up for a meal meeting or use our car park as a checkpoint for their rallies, or simply to do a photo shoot, as the Caterham 7 mob we're doing here. And then last thing we do up there is we do wing walking. Most of that is for charity. People pay for charity to do the ride, and we make an awful lot of money on behalf of charity doing that. We also use the Stearman without wing walkers for people who just want the experience of flying in a big biplane. And we do the same with the Tiger Moth from Henstridge and people who want to have the Biggles experience. And the Tiger Moth one includes a sheepskin jacket, a leather helmet, and a pair of goggles, so you really do feel the part. Bodmin itself is not a huge airfield, not compared to a lot of the airfields to the north and to the east of us, such as Compton Abbas or Popham or Shobden or Sleep or any of those on the M25 orbital. But COVID hit us quite hard last year, as it sure did for a lot of other people. And in 2020, the main year of the pandemic, you should see there, we lost 221 days out of the year, which is more than 60% of our total, due to a mixture of the lockdowns and inclement weather. And as you can see there, the differences in 2019 to 2020, where we lost over 3,000 movements between pre-COVID and COVID. We're recovering this year. We'll probably get to about 5,000, I think, before the year is out. And fuel again, down from 55,000 to less than 35,000. And as you can imagine, a loss of 3,000 landing fees or 20 odd thousand litres of fuel cells. That's quite a big hit for us to take as a small airfield, but we managed through, and we're now on the up again. But the point of the talk, of course, is about how green is the airfield. How did we arrive at having a green airfield? And as you can see there in this picture, our airfield is absolutely awash with wildflowers and the most vibrant colours. But the point is, we don't know what we were looking at the time. It's just pretty, and it's all about traditional hay meadows. England, the traditional hay meadows have decreased not by 100%, but it's getting close. 97% of the total of traditional hay meadows throughout England have gone since the end of the Second World War. Most of this is down to the intense farming methods they use nowadays, the fact that they've grubbed out all the hedgerows, they use very, very big modern machinery, they use very specialised herbicides, pesticides, land drainage is going on everywhere, and of course, not only are there industrial developments going on in the country, but there's lots of townies who want their rural idyll and they want their little cottage in the country. So there's housing development going all the time. And the outcome of this increase is that wildflowers have also gone down in the 20th century. The result is that we have now less than 6,000 hectares of hay meadows left in the UK, which is a dreadful number. It's terrible. And airfields in every county, wherever you're from, all the members here who are either part of an airfield management team, work on an airfield, live on an airfield, or are active on the airfield, you all know they're pretty much private property. They're not open to public access, and the public are prohibited from just wandering around. And that means that they may, and may is in capital letters here for a reason, they may unknowingly actually be hiding some of the most important ecological valuable land in the country without actually knowing it. These photographs are all of, again, all taken from Bodmin. I took most of these photos. I think one or two of them I borrowed. I think most of them are mine. The GAAC has 128 airfields listed in the UK for GA, but they believe there could be as many as 750 if you take into account all the very small minor airstrips and the farm strips. And it's easy maths to work out how the airstrip could actually be helping the situation without knowing it. And that's it. If you assume an average airfield, normal airfield is 800 meters by 400 meters in area, and 800 meters is not a long runway, and 400 meters is not a long secondary runway. And a lot of the airfields, RAF or USAF in the Second World War, are much, much bigger than that. But if we just stick to a nice, simple 800 by 400, and I'm using BODMIN as that measurement, then this is equal to an area of about 32 hectares per airfield. And simple maths is multiply 128 J airfields by 32 hectares, you get over 4,000 hectares. That would be a potential increase of 68%, possibly, of new hay meadows that people don't know exist. And if you take 750 airfields as your total, again, because they're quite small, and you half the area available as just as an example, so you're doing 400 by 200, which is very small in area. That's a good low number, so you're not over-egging the custard. You actually get 6,000 hectares, which is potentially a doubling of what would currently have endangered hay meadows. So airfields may actually be at the start of something very, very positive for the country, and it will help the airfields as well. We started completely by accident. As I say, Bodmin is a traditional hay meadow by accident, not by design. And it starts with this man here. The chap there on the left is Ian Benalik. He's the botanical reporter for Cornwall, and he's co-authored more than that book, the Red Book of Cornish Wildflowers. He's done some others. He is the kind of guy who, when you meet him, he is instantly likable. He's the sort of chap, the minute you meet him, you know you're going to get on with him. And he's a fabulous chap. And in 2019, he was walking past the airfield with his dog one day, because he goes all over Cornwall as part of his job. And he spotted what he thought was an orchid on the airfield side of the verge. So he called up the airfield, and I happened to be on duty. And he said, can he come and do a quick survey of the airfield estate? And I said to him, well, naturally, you're welcome, you come on in. So he did. He came in, and the quick 2-hour survey that Ian conducted in the airfield not only surprised us, but it surprised Ian too. Not only did he confirm the existence of the orchid he spotted in the outfield, and there it is there, it's a southern marsh orchid, and there's a close-up of the beautiful flower head that it produces. But more than that, he had listed no fewer than 130 species in 2 hours of wildflowers and wild grasses around the airfield. So he asked if he could come back another time with 2 other botanical colleagues to conduct a wider survey of the airfield, which again, we said by all means do. Next time we arrived, we walked around, it increased to 156 species, and we now didn't have 1 orchid species, we had 3. And there they are there, in that top left picture at the background, the 3 purple flowers are the southern marsh orchids. In the foreground is a single heath spotted orchid, and on the right there is a beautiful greater butterfly orchid. This picture just shows them individually. We have more than that on the airfield. What he couldn't believe when he saw it was not only did we have 3 species of orchid on the airfield, we had over 3,000 individual orchids themselves growing across the airfield, which he had never ever seen before. So anyway, he told us, due to the abundance of 2 plants called yellow rattle and eyebright on the field, but along with other species, that we should now really consider donating some hay complete with those seeds. So those organizations who are trying to convert fields back from non-organic to organic to get traditional hay meadows. And the reason why he mentioned yellow rattle and eyebright, if I go back and you look at the butterfly orchid on the right there, you'll notice all those little yellow flowers dotted all over the picture, and also around the orchid itself, all those little white flowers dotted everywhere. The yellow flower is rattle, the white flower is eyebright, and both of those are parasitic on grass. And what they do is they suppress grass growth on an airfield, which allows wild flowers to grow. And that's the quickest and best way to convert a grass field to a hay meadow, is just spread as much rattle and eyebright as you can across the field. So what happened was, we were then contacted by the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, who are a national agency, and they specialize in assisting farms who are doing just that, going from non-organic to organic. And they came because they wanted our seeds, and they wanted to take them out to a local farm that was actually converting. And here they all are collecting rattle seeds prior to taking it over to the farm. We made our first station of our hay in July of this year, and we cut 2 acres for them in one of the corners of the airfield. We've got a local farmer who we have very good relationships with anyway, which we'll see later on. We have very good relationships with local farmers. He came in, did the cut for us for free. And they took the hay down to Heligan Barton, it's called, which is an adjunct to the Lost Gardens of Heligan estate, for them to convert 2 fields in their 600-acre farm across to a traditional hay meadow. And word is now starting to get around. Just after we did a full cut of the airfield this year, the National Trust, the countryside manager for Lanhydrock House, which is a big stately home here in Cornwall, got in touch with us and asked if he could also request we give him some hay. It'll have to be next year because we've cut the airfield already, which he's happy with, because they want to convert a 6-hectare field in front of Lanhydrock House into a hay meadow. Currently got sheep in it. But he said what he wants is for people to get out of their cars and then walk up to the house through a hay meadow. So we're going to do that with them next year. And converting to an airfield, how do you do it? If you haven't got one by accident like we have, how do you go about doing one? Well, you would think that the CAA would be of help here, and they do have a CAP 772, which is the Wildlife Hazard Management at Aerodromes CAP document. And Chapter 5 of this document outlines specifically habitat management and is aimed especially at grassland management. And as you see there in that list of what's in that chapter, you've got mowing, long grass policy, which I'll come to later, nutrient application, overseeding, weed control, herbicide type, pest control, moss control. And those last 5 are ones that make you think, uh-oh, this doesn't sound like they're actually inviting you to have a hay meadow. And in fact, they're not. First and foremost, if you want a traditional hay meadow on your airfield, do not follow CAA's guidance on wildlife management, because all they want is a green field. On the top right there is a photograph of Coventry of mine, and it shows our grass cutter cutting, and he's already cutting what to you and me is already short grass. And that's the long grass policy. The long grass policy of the CAA is no shorter than 6 inches grass, no longer than 10 inches grass. That's the rough thing. The reason they do that is if it's shorter than 6 inches, big birds such as rooks, crows and gulls can get on your airfield and feed in the grass. If it's longer than 10 inches, small birds can hide in the grass away from predators. And of course, they want to mitigate bird strike risks at aerodrome, which is why they have this grass policy. What we want is what's on the left there, which is in the corner of our airfield. And again, that was on the day when Anne was with us, and we were walking around the airfield. That's a corner down by runway 31, and it's as you see, it's almost waist deep in knapweed. And knapweed is butterfly and moth paradise, so it's there for the pollinators. So going back to the CAA's CAP document, nothing in it will guide you if you want a traditional hay meadow, so you may as well not read it. First and foremost, why are you even considering wanting to go green? Well, the answer is simple on many levels. None of them are losers. Every single one of them is a winner and will enhance your community standing, which is just as important as having a hay meadow. And the answer is pollinators. And these are 2 photographs I took from some of our buddleia bushes on the airfield. On the left there is a buff-tailed bumblebee, and on the right is a red mason bee. And again, just in the same period that we've lost 97% of our traditional hay meadows, we've also had the extinction of 13 species of bee, which includes 3 bumblebee species, and there are currently 30 more bee species considered as under threat of extinction. And amazingly, not a single bee species in the UK is protected by law, yet they are in serious, serious trouble. There are only 25 species of bumblebee in the UK, but there are more than 200 species of bee. And surprisingly, the majority of the bee species are not hive bees or honeybees, they're single, lonesome bees. They live solitary lifestyles all by themselves. The mason bee in my photograph is an example. He's the kind of guy who will inhabit your bee hotel if you've got one. He'll put his grub in there, and then he'll mortar up the front of it, which is why he's a mason bee. He'll put the cement in and to protect it, and then he'll put himself in there for the winter as well. And as I say, the vast majority are in serious trouble in this country, struggling to survive. Climate change is not helping, but loss of habitat is the main thing. To the point now that everybody is getting concerned. And big corporations such as the BBC, those who listen to BBC Radio 2 to Zoe Ball in the morning will have heard her, Channel 4, the Women's Institute, Friends of the Earth, Greenpeace, you know, even the UK government, plus all the big organisations, banks, building societies, people such as like that. They've been running major campaigns this year to try and get people to assist bees in any way that they can by planting whatever they can. Most councils around us here in Devon and Cornwall are planting the road verges and all the roundabouts with wildflowers to assist the bees. So it's a big thing. And of course, it's a big thing for a good reason. Pollinators are not just pretty, we actually do need them. Because whilst most grain crops, wheat and barley, etc. in the UK are wind pollinated, 85% of all commercial vegetables and fruit crops, the orchards and berries, and the big non-grain crops, such as rapeseed, they're all pollinated by bees and other pollinators. And without them, you are not going to get these vibrant ranges of fruits and vegetables in your supermarket. And for the serious drinker, which there are one or two on here this evening I spotted, that includes most wines, ciders, and other alcoholic drinks. They won't be available. So we have to look after our pollinators. But pollinators, pretty obviously, they're not just restricted to bees. They include butterflies, moths, hoverflies, beetles, and even wasps, and even ordinary flies. Some of the wildflowers that are around in the UK have evolved to attract just specific species as their pollinators, whereas some other wildflowers release scent only at night because they have moths that pollinate them. But in all cases, you have to do what you can to assist. And again, the same buddleia bushes we have around the airfield attract butterflies throughout the year. On the left there is a small tortoise shell. On the right is a red admiral. We have about 10 to 12 species of butterfly on the airfield that we know of. And people used to tell us about the buddleia, oh, they're rampant, they run wild. We know that, but we're leaving them exactly as they are. We're letting them run wild because it's going to help the pollinators every single year. So first of all, how do you find out what you've got? Where do you start? How do you get there? This is the advice from Ian Benallet when we asked him what's the best thing to do. And he told us here, every county or vice county, a vice county is just simply a county that's been split into north, south, east, west regions, has a system of botanical recorders, of which he's one, who belong to the Botanical Society of Britain and Ireland. And the BSI recorders, on behalf of the local councils, record all wildlife and botany around the county. And their recorders are always keen to get access to those areas they haven't been in before, and because they're usually out of bounds, and they would therefore love the chance to survey or assess an airfield because they're out of bounds. So if you've got an airfield, what Ian says, contact the BSBI via this link, and there it is you see there, that online link. That will take you to a list of every county and the recorder's name and contact details, and you just get in touch with them. If that county doesn't have a recorder because they're going through the process of changing one, you go to the top of the list, and the national person in charge of the recorders, he's there. You go to him, and he will put you in touch with somebody. Because as I say, as you see from those two photographs, to have what we have in the background and not know what it is or how to help it would be a crime. So that's what we did. And then alternatively, if you're not sure where the recorder is, or you actually have a local university near you or a college where they have a botany department, a zoology department, and you know they're doing work in that area, get in touch with them and ask them if they would like to come down and conduct a botanical or even a pollinator survey on your airfield, because they will. Such that we now have a relationship with the University of Exeter's Environment and Sustainability Institute, and they send postgraduate and PhD students down who are working on their degrees. And currently we have a young girl who's doing an ongoing pollinator survey all year round at the airfield as part of the Wildflower Collective Project. And they will send down soil people and all sorts to sort out what you've got. But if you build up a good relationship with your local university or college to send students down, that's another positive for you as an airfield in your community. The problem is always, how do you do it? Unlike Alan Titchmarsh, who can change a garden in a week, according to a TV program, you can't get a hay meadow overnight. It will only transform at the speed that nature dictates, depending on what you've already got or what you intend getting. And according to the advice, it can take up to 3, sometimes 2, but they said normally 3 to 5 years to create a mature hay meadow from spreading it by seed, which is spreading the hay all over it. And if you leave it to go naturally, it can take anywhere from between 7 to 5 years to convert a grassland field into a meadow, and a perennial meadow with the kind of diversity that we've got, because we are now up to 170 species at BODMIN. That can only improve over a period of 50 to 20 years. So we're lucky. I don't think we're alone in the UK to have an airfield like we've got. I think there are more. And officially, according to the National Vegetation Classification, we are now formally an MG5 grassland. An MG5 grassland is unofficially what's known as a traditional hay meadow. So if you've got to introduce, what do you do? How do you start? Where do you go? Well, first things first, as I said before, ignore the CAA and don't cut your airfield on a regular basis. Don't cut your airfield, period. Because a traditional hay meadow is only cut once a year. and that is at the very end of the growing season and at no other time. So you never trim it, you just let it grow wild. So all you need to do is a single cut, any time from late July to early September, depending on when summer is obviously over. That's all you need. And do what we do. We invite our local farmer in to do the necessary, because he's got all the gear. We don't have cutters, we don't have balers and all that sort of thing. And in return for his help, you say to him, take the hay. So what he does for us is he cuts, he turns, he harrows, he then bales, and he removes it, and he uses it for winter fodder for his own cattle. So we get a free airfield cut that doesn't cost us a penny, and he gets free bales of hay. It's a win-win on both sides. Last year or this year, we had about 100 and something bales that he got to take away. And what we found out was actually each bale, if it was an ordinary bale of hay from a green silage field, an ordinary bale of hay retails for about £30. A bale of hay from a traditional hay meadow, we found out, retails at £60 because of what it contains. Now, unfortunately, we're an airfield. We don't have the manpower, the wherewithal, or the ability to market bales of hay, to transport them and to store them and all the rest of it. So we can't get in the business of being a selling bale. So it makes sense for us to give them all to the farmer, and we'll just get a free cut out of it. He comes back and he does other stuff in the year for us for free, as I pointed out earlier. So that also helps us out as well. Now then, the other plants to introduce or to think about is that pollinators, bumblebees, are actually active all year round. They actually don't stop, and bees will actually remain active if the air temperature stays above 6 degrees. Bumblebees will forage as long as the temperature is 11 degrees above, so they never stop. And the same goes for many of the other pollinators you'll see around you. So really, what you really want in your airfield is anything that will flower from literally January to December. And I know that sounds like that doesn't take place, but it does, because anybody here who has gorse in their area will have noticed, but not probably, it wouldn't have sunk in, that it actually flowers. It starts in October and it carries on into the new year. And why would it do that? The reason it does that is because it has worked out there are pollinators out in the winter. And if it flowers in the winter, it's effectively cornered the market with pollinators, and they will all come to it. Same with the primroses. Primroses, as you'll notice, they'll start flowering in December, and they carry on into May. And it's May when the spring and summer flowers start. So they get in early as well, and they corner the market. The two photographs you see here, the one on the left, you can't quite make the windsock out in this picture. That was taken in December last year. And the one on the right, the primroses, that was taken on New Year's Day to show that they're up and running on New Year's Day, ready for the pollinators to take them. So anything you can do to help, do it. But is there a plant you don't want on the airfield? And the answer to that one, unfortunately, is yes. It's the ragwort. Now, ragwort in itself is of no danger to aircraft. It won't harm an aircraft at all. But it is one of 5 native British plants that the government have listed in their Weeds Act of 1959 as an injurious weed. And they've made it law that landowners have to consider removal of ragwort from their land to ensure it does not spread to any neighbouring property. And as you see in the act there on the right-hand side, I'll ring ragwort to show you there it is listed. And you'll see the little side note there. It says powers to require occupier to prevent spreading of injurious weeds. So you are responsible for getting rid of it. Ragwort is such that it even has its own act. It's the only British native plant to have that, and it's the Ragwort Control Act of 2003. And there are some conservationists, Chris Packham's one of them, who are so incensed at having laws against this poor little plant that they petitioned Parliament in 2017 to have the Weeds Act repealed, because they said it also helped pollinators, which we believe they do. We don't think it doesn't. Anybody knows the cinnabar moth knows that the ragwort, that's the plant it goes to. So you've got to ask yourself as to why it has a bad reputation, because the government said we're not going to repeal the Weeds Act because the Weeds Act doesn't seek to eliminate or eradicate the species. So why does it have a bad reputation? It's because of this. Here's BODMIN Airfield on one of Pete White's event weekends. I think this is a Cornwall Strut weekend. And as you see there, I've ringed 3 of the fields that are on our boundary. The top right is sheep, which you can see inside that circle. The top left inside the big circle, that's Cardinham Downs Common. That's cattle and sheep. And then bottom of the picture is sheep. And the problem is ragwort is toxic to cattle or sheep or horses if ingested. We also have bridleways that cross us. There's a bridleway that comes across the bottom of this picture. There's a bridleway that goes down the northern boundary of our airfield. So we have courses there too. We're surrounded on all four sides, as you can see there, by active sheep and cattle farms, and we're ringed by bridleways. So we've got no choice. We've got a duty of care to ensure that ragwort does not contaminate our farms. So we have to get rid of it. We also have to get rid of it from inside the airfield because unfortunately our woolly neighbours in those fields do not always respect the boundaries. And as you can see there, anytime they can break through a fence or a hedge, get onto our airfields to eat that lovely green grass that's laying out there, they will. And this is one of our duty managers, Richard Shaw, in fact, who I think is in the audience tonight, who's practicing his sheep herding skills. And we use that picture actually in a photograph in one of our newsletters, just for a joke. There was a prize to be earned if you could number, give the total amount of every single sheep in that picture. And I'm sure there's one or two people watching at the moment who've got their finger to their screen. We're going, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, I'll put you out in misery. The answer is 49. There were 49 sheep in that, and Richard got rid of them all in one swoop off the airfield. But also, Bodmin Airfield, on the edge of Bodmin Moor, we have a huge population of roe deer around us, and they always come onto our airfield in the morning to feed. And roe deer also are infected by ragwort, and they can also die from ingesting it. That's another reason why both inside and outside we remove the ragwort. And there we are, or there's me on the ragwort patrol, and I've gone along one of our boundary fences or boundary hedges, and I've removed ragwort from one of the fences. There's an awful lot. You wouldn't believe how much ragwort there is once it gets in there. So we clear it, not only from our own airfield estate to stop it spreading, but we actually go outside the airfield and we clear it from the lanes all the way around us and all the bridleways that surround us. We clear it all out, despite this being outside our property boundary and despite it not being our responsibility. But by doing such a thing, we are seen in a very positive light by all our neighbours, especially our farmers, and also by the equestrian villagers we have around us who like to go riding around Bodmin Moor because of what we do. They know we do it because we always report it in our newsletter, and our newsletter is online for them to read for free. So the other thing we do as well that helps us with community relationships, and is also another reason to have a green airfield, is we cut back and box off hedgerows as well. Hedgerows play a vital part in providing food and shelter, not only for small mammals and birds, but also for insects. All our hedges are ancient hedges. They're very old, because we say the farm's been there for over 130 years. And the earth banks on which the hedges are built provide winter homes for many of the solitary bee species. They cut into the bank and they live in there during the winter. So at the end of every growing year, as you spot around your own airfield, the hedges are often wild and tangled, just as ours are. And so what we do is we get the local farmer in, as you can see there. He comes in and he cuts back and boxes our hedges for us. And he does it for free because he gets all those bales for free every year. And as with your meadow cut, again, as I just said, get your farmer in to do it for you, and I'm sure he would because he's got the right equipment. And it has a double-edged sword. Not only are you making the hedges good for local wildlife, it improves the look of your airfield boundary. It's neat, it's tidy. It also improves the growth of the hedgerow for next year, making it a stronger, better hedge, and it encourages wildlife. We also get him to brush cut the road, as you see there on the right, and the lane running down to our airfield and past our airfield. He brush cuts the verges for us again, and it just looks neat and tidy. So it's a community service. It's not our responsibility outside the airfield, but we do it. It should be the council, but we do it, and I think they're happy as well. But all the villages nearby who have to drive down that lane are very supportive of the efforts we're making in making the area look good. Maintenance, piece of cake, because a green airfield is simple. You're only cutting it once a year, which means you do nothing to the outfield whatsoever. You only need to concentrate on your runways, taxiways, and your parking areas. It makes life so much easier for you, and the outcome of leaving your outfield to grow wild is the ecologically important environment you're seeking. Local weather and manpower availability will be your only concerns as to the frequency you mow your runways. And as Bodmin is a grass airfield, we try and cut in the summer about once a week if we can. We use the gang mowers on the runways and the taxiways. And if that breaks down, or if we can't use it, we get Richard Shaw out with a whip. We tell him to take the hand mower out and walk. So, and he cuts it by hand. And you only need to cut as a needs-be basis. And you leave the outfield, and it's not labour intensive. It helps you an awful lot. leaving the airfield, it just makes it a more colourful place. It's beautiful to look at during the year. And then from May to August, it's a riot of colour. And those colours will change as the year goes by, because different species come out in March, April, May, June, July, August. It's changing all the time. And the meadow buttercups keep going all year round, which is why that yellow predominates in a lot of the photographs. And of course, to the casual onlooker who doesn't know the traditional hay meadows actually exist there, to him it looks like a great big field when we look over the hedge. And it looks as though the aircraft are actually landing in long grass in the helicopters, and that we don't have runway. But it's well worth having. The only problem you will have is that one cut per year. You have to cut it just the once, but then all that happens is what the CAA are trying to mitigate against, which is you lose your long grass policy, and it stops discouraging the birds from coming in and loitering. So you get what they talk about. And as you see there, we've got rooks there who are looking for grubs. There's nothing wrong with the rooks looking for grubs, because if they can take all the leather jackets out, it helps us with the growing of the wildflowers in the next year. But we also get starling roosts that come in, and of course we've got to be wary of that. So all that happens is if you've got a safety management system on your airfield for burst strike risk mitigation, you just got to up your game for a couple of weeks to make sure that your aircraft is safe for when you're flying. Having the long grass has other benefits insofar as wildflowers will bring you insects, which is what you want, pollinators. The insects do bring birds, swallows, and small birds bring big birds, and so the food chain goes on. And also gives cover to small, medium mammals, and therefore we have lots of little rodents on our airfield. We have shrews, we have field mice, we also have rabbits, and that brings in birds of prey. So as you see there, every single hangar bar one has got a colony of swallows in it at the airfield, which are beautiful. They're here from May to September, and then they head off back to South Africa in September. And things, very rare sort of field of that stone chat you see there sitting on one of our fences, come in to feed on the insects. But what it does mean in our outfield is we have a very large and a very healthy population of skylarks. And everybody who has an airfield that's got skylarks on it, there's nothing better than the first thing in the morning when you're doing your walk around the airfield to be only out there with the skylarks singing. It's actually a wonderful experience. And of course, as I say, big birds, that's the problem. When your short grasses, you go to the short grass, when you cut at the end of the year, it exposes the rabbit warrens. We've got 3 around our airfield, and rabbits, if you've got them. This brings in the birds of prey. We've got buzzards. We've got a full pair of buzzards that live just outside our southern boundary. And this is the eastern warren, that picture there where all those rabbits are standing. It's the eastern one. There's a bank just behind that red and white crash barrier. There's a little warren in there. And next to it is a hangar. And there's one of the buzzards waiting. And it's a well-used spot, because that's a green hangar, and where he's standing is white, because he sits there and he craps on a very regular basis. And there for the other 2 warrens, we have 2 windsocks at Bodmin, western and northern, and we have a windsock on each. And as you can see there, favourite perch for the buzzards when they're looking for food. We have a NIMBY. She's now become a counsellor, but she is an awful, awful NIMBY who's complained bitterly about noise from the airfield. She only moved in 4 years ago, and as soon as she moved in next to an airfield, she complained about the airfield. And she complained to me one day that we were scaring the birds of prey. And I couldn't, unfortunately, at the phone call, I couldn't show her these photographs and say, that is a Cessna 172 running up his engine at full power, and that buzzard is just sitting there. So they are not scaring the local birds of prey. And they don't. All the birds learn to live with the airfield, as you all know. And it's about educating the NIMBYs. Having an airfield like this does do it, even though it's slowly. And of course, now it's still going on. Tomorrow is the last day, the 12th of November. There is another, no, it's 2 days, isn't it? It's going on the 12th, yeah. Darren Fern, our chairman, said this when we first talked about this to the local press who were asking about it, that there is an opportunity now for all airfields to be recognised as being environmental heroes and not the villains for change. And that is true. Every airfield has NIMBYs. If you can educate them that what you've got is actually a national treasure, and you are doing your utmost to save the pollinators and the wildflower meadows, and a little bit of flying takes place on the side, they will actually eventually come round to your side, because everybody else in our area is on our side, bar these 2 sets of NIMBYs that we have. So with COP26, the focus being on protection of wildlife and climate change, especially, if ever there was a time when you've got the golden opportunity to do something to your airfield and go green, now is probably the time when everybody is actually thinking about it. And thinking about doing it, the youth of today, Greta Thunberg, whether, you know, Marmite, like her or love her, but the one thing about her is that she has got the politicians scared, and they're doing stuff they might not have done if she hadn't done her blah, blah, blah talks. The youngsters know all about the environment. They know what's coming. They know that the planet's going to be theirs one day and not ours. So they're the ones you need to get on site. And it's dead easy. Do what we do. Make them a part of your airfield world. We've had a number of local primary schools, in fact, coming as far as Horrabridge and Devon, a long way away, who've come down to the airfield as part of their education. Most times they're doing transport and aviation, which is why they're visiting, but you can combine it with wildlife support and pollinator presentation. It can only be a community winner for you, inviting these people in and making it a part of the community as we do. But don't limit it to schools. As you see here, we bring the local beavers and the cubs in. And they've got their badges, and they have to earn global issue badges, and the cubs do their NACFIS badges. And there you see a bunch of beavers, including bottom left in that picture, Joe Cool with his sunglasses on an overcast day, who've just been awarded something for something they did at our airfield, which they're very proud of. And again, you can't go wrong by encouraging these people to come in and using your airfield as your tool. And the question is always, well, how many people will be interested around here in coming to the airfield? Well, you'd be surprised how many local societies, organizations, groups, you name it, even national ones, who are in your local community and who are active, who have an interest in nature, who are out and about all the time, and would love to be invited up to your airfield if you've got something to show them. Every village in your area will have some connection to natural history and some link to a membership whose sole interest is protection and stewardship of their local environment. So show them the bit they've not been able to see before. We've already had a number of them. Here they are here. Local gardening club, the botanical formal group, ERCCIS, that's the environmental recording something of Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and the Women's Institute. Get them to come up and have a look. They came up and had a look, and they loved it. And the thing is, at your local parish council meeting, you always have the Women's Institute sitting in there. There's always one or two in the audience. And if that NIMBY gets up and has a go at your airfield, bet your bottom dollar the Women's Institute is going to get up and shout them down. Because if they liked you, they will always be on your side, no matter where you find them. Dave Cole is in the audience. The message is getting out there. You know, the question is really who's going to respond, and it's being taken up and it's spreading. The two biggest GA magazines in the UK, one online, one not. Or one, you know, with the print run, Flyer and Pilot, they've both carried articles on what's going on at BODMIN Airfield with the hay meadow. The LEA, as you all know, in their latest Light Aviation magazine has an article that I wrote. But more exciting than that is it's going outside of aviation now. And here you see the Trails and Grasslands website also carried a similar article in October. So we're very pleased that it's going out there as well. And who's responding? Well, we've just seen somebody has started responding. The Western Morning News, only last week, the 4th of November, printed this. Down the road from us at Land's End Airport, they invited in a local environmental organisation called the Penrith Landscape Partnership and invited them to collect seeds, which is what we've been doing, what we've been advertising, for them to take to local sites on the Lizard Peninsula to plant. So word is getting around. The more times you do that, the more benefit you're going to get from your local community. So that's where we are today. It all works. We think that you can't go wrong having a green airfield. If you haven't got one already, think about having one. You don't have to. If you're constrained by the CAA because you are a licensed airfield, your long grass policy is going to be hard to mitigate against the CAA if you let it grow long, but you may be able to get around it by what's going on at COP26 by saying, you know, we have to look after the environment and we'll risk mitigate the bird strike risk as it grows. If you're a farmer, you're at a farm strip and you grow crops next to your runway, you're not going to get a traditional hay meadow unless you decide to give up your crop growing spaces. But even then, on any small airfield, leave your verges. Now, if you don't want to do around your runways, leave your verges as meadows, because the majority of the traditional hay meadow space in the UK, according to Ian Benalik, is actually road verges. It's not fields. He said, so leave your verges of your airfield free, let them grow wild, see what you get. So, has it all been worth it? That little boy's face says, yeah, it has. It's an absolute success. We're glad that we've got it. It was by accident, not by design, but we're not stopping there. And I hope you've enjoyed the talk I've given you. Thanks for taking the time to listen. It's not over yet, but I'm not going to see you or speak to you again this year, I don't think. So I've got one final message for you. and it's apt because of the Vintage Aircraft Club, and that's to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and next time we'll see you.